Okay, so in this video we're checking out the next mouse, which I call it's the Hungry Trainee Ninja mouse, and you'll see why I call it that later on. So as you can see, it's the usual thing like what happened in the previous video, where what I'm doing is, drop a few bits of bait around. And you notice that this mouse is taking its time. And even though it's hungry, it's not going to just jump in it. And remember, this mouse saw the other mouse in the trap. So what this shows you is that mice, they don't have like an intelligence whereby they can know something's a trap. All they know is that something's dangerous, or something might be dangerous, and they just use a general, whatever intelligence they have to try and work out if the danger is there or not. But the methods they use are very rudimentary. It's not anything sort of super intelligent. So as you can see, it's picking up the little pieces of bait. And as you can see, it's being proper careful. It's not like it's just running straight in. So no, you have to at least give the fact that, remember, this is even a younger mouse as well. It's not. So essentially, the previous mouse is an older mouse, and it was being less careful than this younger mouse, which shows you that it seems as if mice seem to operate in like an opposite way. That once the longer they've survived, the less careful they are. Because even in one of the older videos I did, where I had Mama Mouse in it, I mean, she wasn't careful at all. So now he's going in, but notice it's not going straight for the big food at all. Just picking up the little, the few little pieces it can find. But one thing is for sure, it is hungry. Because as you can see, it will take every little piece that it finds. And as you can see, it's still checking around the outside, seeing if it can find anything, anywhere else apart from the big prize, which is at the end. So it shows you that mice are not like super dumb, in that they won't just run straight for the bait, and that's what you shouldn't really expect. Even a mouse like this, which is young, because you can see it's small. It's smaller than the previous one. And that does seem to be the case, that the mice which are younger, they take less risks. And that's kind of like the opposite for humans, because human children take more risks and the adults take less risk. But with mice, it just seems to be the opposite. I was just going to say that this video is going to take a while. Well, anyway, so now what's going to happen? We're getting close to, yeah. Admittedly, that didn't take too long. So now the mouse is in. And you saw the moves that it just made, how quick they were, and that's why I call it the Trainee Ninja mouse. So now let's see these moves in slow motion. So here it comes. So you see the trap's down just as it leaps, and so it managed to hit and bounce off the end. So it jumps to the top, sticks up, drops down. And checks both sides. It jumps up again, bounces off. It jumps to the other end, bounces off the food, sticks to the roof, and drops down in the middle, and then jumps across, bounces off the end, and it does a quick check where else it can look, and that's it. And that's the end of sort of like the main excitement. Alright, so now it's going to do another leap to the top. So it jumps up, sticks to the roof, bounces off, down to the middle. And I think it's going to do one more. So it's finally got to the food, but notice it's not eating it. So it jumps up, sticks to the roof, and it's back down again. It leaps across to the end. helps to loosen a bit of food as well. And I think I had to do this 20 times slower if I remember correctly. That's the reason why. And so even at 20 times the speed, 20 times slower, the mouse still looks fast. Wait, alright, yeah, so that's it. So that's the end of the excitement in terms of jumping around. And the thing I like is the way that once it's trapped, it's not interested in the food anymore. So now it's got all that lovely food, but being trapped obviously doesn't doesn't really help the situation. And as you can see, it's just going to repeatedly try the same things over again. So while it's shuffling around, I was just going to describe the trap, because as you notice that when the trapdoor drops down, for obvious reasons, I made sure that it drops down inside, because obviously it means that there isn't any way to push the trap. But then I've seen other traps which are designed that way, so that's a normal way to design the trap. And now you might wonder, how is it that that trapdoor manages to drop down so quickly? And that's where a little bit of sort of like the sort of clever design had to come in, because it's not just a trapdoor that drops. There's obviously more going on than that. And that's one of the things about when I had to design this, is I had to think about things like that, because the other thing that I thought about was that with some of the other traps, the trapdoor on them is spring loaded, and what I didn't like about that is that if you spring load the trap door, then if something happens and the mouse is like halfway under, then the door will like crush the mouse if it manages to get halfway under when it's coming down. And the other problem with using a spring is that if you when you're holding the door up, what the spring does, it tends to make because this is plastic, even on metal ones I've seen it, where the metal, the spring like holds the hinge, it like twists the hinge a little bit, and what can happen is that sometimes it can cause the trap door to get to the hinges to jam, because the spring is like twisting it to the side. So the one thing I wanted to be sure of with this particular design is I wanted to make sure that the hinges were free and that there's no tension on them, so when the trap door comes down, it's just dropping sort of through gravity. So there's no spring tension which would cause like the trap door to catch on the side, or because you notice that when that trap door drops, it drops clean. And that was one of the things I had to make sure with the design, is that the trap door can fall down without touching the sides, but also that the gap between the trapdoor and the sides is too small for the mouse to even try to get through. And of course, because it's the 2mm perspex, of course, as you can see, the mouse ain't going to touch that. So what it's trying to do is trying to dig under, but obviously this is just solid carpet, so a little mouse like that is not going to make any progress against the such a tough carpet. And as you can see, it's making no attempt against the perspex, because it knows that that is just solid. So and now of course it's going to get on with the piece of food. So finally it's, because obviously it's hungry and it needs to get get that nourishment in. So even though it's trapped, you have to get around to getting the food business sorted out. And like I was saying also, you notice that this time when it comes to the sensors, etc., I've used proper heat shrink on them. And the reason for putting the weight on the infrared sensors is so that the mouse doesn't move them, when it tries to do a bit of jumping over. Because that's one thing that sometimes the other mice were doing, is where they would keep jumping over the side, and I was worried that if the sensor was too light, then the mouse might move it, which would then cause the trap to go off early. And that's another thing I was going to mention about the trap, is that it's actually, as you might have noticed, even with the previous ones, that it has a little delay on it. So even if the mouse goes past it quickly, the trap won't trigger. So the only way the trap will trigger is if the mouse crouches down, like when it's going for the food, and blocks it for more, I think it's more than about half a second. So it has to actually block the sensor for at least half a second before the trap will go off. So it's not just some simple hair trigger, which of course would end up giving you false positives. And you can see also the way at the top where I've got the solenoid set up. And there's actually, well, later on I'm actually coming up with another version of the trap, which is going to use which is actually going to use a solenoid, because that is actually an electromagnetic. So it's an electromagnet that actually triggers the trap. And you notice that there's a lead weight on top of it as well, or some tire weights on top of it, and that's actually there for a reason. And you probably saw in the previous video that there is it's got a circuit board with some LEDs on it, and there's a reason for that as well. Because what I've done is that I've actually, the new circuit that I came up with, well, it's not a new circuit, but I decided, well, yeah, the board itself is different, because before I was using, what was it, Arduino, I think, Nano, that's right, is it Arduino Nano? Yeah, so as you can see, the mouse is just there, still trying to do the usual of trying to dig its way under. But you notice that it stopped. And there's a reason for that. Because as we know, there's usually only one reason why a mouse stops. And you can see why. So finally it's time. Okay, so now the mouse is securely in the trap. And you can see the way that it's on top of the perspex again, just like the previous one. And of course, with this mouse being smaller, it stands even less chance of getting out than the previous one. And you can see it's not really making much of an attempt, because I think it can feel the perspex is smooth. So I think when something is smooth, it's like the mouse knows it's like stone. Because you notice that if a mouse is on stone, it's not going to attempt. So you can see the electronic inside the box on top. Okay, so I'm just moving it around a bit to try and line it up for sliding the perspex underneath. Right, so we've got the perspex underneath it, and so now it's ready for transport, just like the previous one. As you can see, it's trying to, I think because there's a little gap there, it can somehow get out, but of course that wasn't happening. As you can see, it's got no interest in the food. Alright, so yeah, again, we've got the mouse out. And as I said before, the whole point of this trap is the easy transport. And this was the other problem I was having, is that when I'm trying to hold the camera and the trap, because the other trap was big, it wobbled about a bit, it wasn't as stable. But because this trap is a lot smaller, it's easier to hold it in one hand. As expected, it's not interested in the food anymore. Okay, so now I'm in the park. So, yeah, it's a common sort of place. So I've decided to come from the other way. So this is a slightly shorter way, so it's different, because there's two different places I usually release the mice. And if it's too late at night, then I'll just go this way. Okay, so that's it. So this particular trap, because it's smaller, it's easier to put higher up, and also because I don't have to pull the bottom out like I did on the previous trap, it's a lot easier getting the mouse out. But yeah, again, as you can see, even though freedom is there, the mice aren't very hot at finding it. They knew where to jump as soon as the danger came though. So that's it, it's gone. So just pull the bottom off and then just let it have its food. Obviously you can come back for that later. And this time we put on the detachable escape hatch, and that jumps into place. And that's what's so good about using these magnets. It dropped off. Alright, yeah, that's back in place. Not going to leave any rubbish behind, so clear up the litter and then we're ready to go back. So it's as simple as that with the new trap. There's no big bottom on it, so I don't have to slide it off or anything. Just take off the back, the mouse jumps out and job's done. So that's why I did that particular design feature into it, so that when it came to, I didn't have to like do too much fiddling to get it in position for the mouse to get out. And just make sure the litter goes in the bin. Okay, so that's it. So now we're just on the way back out. I notice you can hear that noise in the background. You might wonder what is that, and this shows you the time when I did this this video, because that's actually one of the testing stations where the people who wanted to take their injection had to go. Now, of course, if you go there now, the place is completely blank because they built it up and then just took it down once the scam was over, and people could go back to normal. You can see where the old generator. So that's the old testing station when it used to be there.